This is Dying Your Way.
Welcome everyone to the Dying Your Way podcast. I'm Claire O'Berry and I am your host. And today we're going to talk about a topic that many people shy away, but it's very important: funeral planning. Now, this is commonly overlooked and left to the family left behind to figure out what you would have wanted and what is within your budget. So we're going to dig into this a little bit, and hopefully after this is finished, you will be inspired to do some of your own funeral planning. So before you hit pause and shy away from funeral planning, you might automatically think that this is going to be too heavy. And I promise you, this conversation is about choices, meaning, and beautiful ways that you can say goodbye. So the goal today, what is it? Hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll have a real appreciation for planning your own funeral or memorial service before the need is there. I say that so often, before the need is there. And you might even feel inspired to leave your loved ones a meaningful and uplifting parting gift called, well, we'll just say your curtain call. Something that's really meaningful. So why do we want to go here? Talk about this. Funeral planning is often avoided until it's unavoidable. But here's the truth. There are more options than you might imagine. Think back to the funerals you've attended. Were they meaningful? Were they true to the person's character? Did they bring people together in laughter, in tears, and shared memories? I've been to many services where a simple act, just something as simple about each guest laying a flower on the casket, or a prayer or an intention on a casket before it's to go into the fire, that really not only were inspiring, but it created a communal moment, which is so important for any traditional ceremony that we have. We want to create communal shared moments that have meaning. And I have heard eulogies where, it was just so inspiring and heartfelt, and they made me reflect on my own life in such a way that probably I went out of that funeral more educated and inspired and even a better person. And on the opposite side of that, I have also been to funerals that felt really disconnected. Maybe there were only a handful of attendees in a cavernous space, or the speaker, who was the preacher, whoever was leading the service, clearly did not know the deceased. And perhaps I'm saying this, my own personal pet peeve, I guess, is when I go to a funeral and they're using the funeral to try to proselytize to attendees rather than honoring the person's life. It's more about saving souls. And I think that misses the mark in a huge way if we want to bring people together. So we want to create treasured moments. And funerals, think of the funerals you've attended. You remember them. You don't forget funerals. So you want to create treasured moments. And all cultures across the world, have varying traditions, but they are meaningful to that particular culture. Jewish funerals are going to typically happen within 24 hours. a Maori tangi, it's going to last for 3 days. Tibetan Buddhists have their sky burials. And in America, for the past century, most after-death care has been handed over, outsourced entirely to funeral homes. So whatever the tradition, one thing matters most, and that's honoring the life and supporting the loved ones left behind, and hopefully bringing the community closer together. So funeral practices are changing based on consumer preferences. So where, here in the United States or even not in Australia, the traditional burial has been most common, but now that's being surpassed by cremations. And again, whether it's a cremation or a funeral, there are ways to personalize that celebration. Now there's interest in green burials. I'm very interested myself in having a green burial, if at all possible. And I could just do a whole podcast just on green burials and why I think they are something to look at. More services are being held outside of churches. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, but it's just the fact of the matter. People like to have their ceremonies at homes or in roller rinks or just whatever's fitting to that person, nature, whatever. And less and less in a church or at a funeral home. And there's less of a religious component to it. And again, where I just said I don't like people proselytizing to me at a funeral, I think it's not a good thing that the religious component has been left out of a funeral, particularly if you're bringing in the religious beliefs of the person who has died. I think I've shared with you already that my mother did a whole body donation, and I'll share a little bit more about that because that was a very positive experience for myself and for my sister. So when it comes down to it, money plays a big role in your decision making. I mean, again, another reason to plan ahead, because if you plan ahead, you typically have a budget that says, okay, this is how much I have allocated for my funeral. You can prepay for funeral services. That's up to you. I wouldn't recommend it. You could put it aside in an account and earn interest on it until you need it. But whatever makes it simplest for you and for your loved ones. So just a fact of the matter, when people are grieving, they tend to make quick decisions and often spend more money than they planned ahead. And so it's very important to set money aside and communicate your wishes so that doesn't happen. If you have burial benefits like insurance, a union benefit, if you're a union member, there are generally benefits that go for towards your funeral. Veterans benefits, huge if you or a loved one was a veteran. So make sure that your loved ones know in advance what insurance or money you have set aside or are part of benefits that you have. And just something for the people in the United States. There's often no benefit to prepaying unless you need to spend down your income for Medicaid. And in that case, you could still put the funds aside in a trust account or something. So you have some flexibility and maybe earning some interest. But I would recommend that you go into the funeral home and just have that conversation with them, knowing that they provide a very important service, but they also are in sales. So keep that in mind. The most expensive option is going to be a traditional burial. And that's going to be in the United States anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 just for things like the funeral director's services, the casket, embalming, use of the facility, the grave site, grave digging, the liner vault, the headstone. I think that's not realistic. I think if you were talking about purchasing a burial site, depending on where you live, it's probably, and paying for a memorial, I mean, it could cost as much as $30,000. And then you have to also think about the extras like the clergy fees, flowers, musicians, obituary notices, receptions, and travel. So it's not cheap. It's really not cheap. But there are ways to do a really inexpensive remembrance that is very meaningful, that is on a budget. So don't let that deter you from doing something lovely that's within your budget. And again, if you're a veteran, you may be entitled to a few benefits that others aren't. Like you get free burial in a national cemetery, so that's a huge expense, and it's kind of putting you in a sacred place that's well maintained, and that's for you and your spouse. But it doesn't include the funeral home services or your casket. So you would want to check what those benefits actually include. And again, my father was in the funeral home business for 65 years. So, I mean, I think funeral directors, funeral homes, most wonderful people in the world, provide a wonderful service, and they can be a huge, huge support. But they are in sales, so go in with a clear plan and a clear budget. If you've looked at all of this beforehand, you just go in and your loved ones are following your wishes, and they go, da, and can avoid a lot of unnecessary costs and make it really lovely the way you want it to be at the same time. So cremation is now the most popular choice that people have. A lot of that, I think, is just because of the price. But people prefer that than the environmental issues that are involved with a traditional burial. But it does have its own environmental impact. But save that for the Green Burial podcast. By 2035, it's predicted, I'm going to take a sip of water. By 2035, it's predicted that 80% of people will choose to have cremation. So that's something that, all funeral directors, all countries are very aware of that and are meeting that consumer need and demand. It's typically less expensive, and it can be anywhere from, say, $1,200 to $4,000, maybe a little bit more, again, depending on the state you live in or the country you live in. Cremation packages vary, so be clear what's included. Does it include transportation, removal of the body and to the actual crematorium? I mean, all the transportation that's involved, the cremation container, what the body is actually put into the crematory in, and then the cost of an urn, death certificates, and the actual cremation. Let me stop here and say something about death certificates, because again, why a funeral director is so important. They can just take care of a lot of this, so you don't have to do it. But when you do get official copies of the death certificate, order more than you think that you need. I think I ordered 12 for my dad. Maybe I used 9 of them. But a lot of people, when you are taking care of business at the end, they want original copies of the death certificate. So when you're planning your funeral and talking about this with your funeral director, order more death certificates, original copies than you think you need, because you're going to need them. Okay, I wanted to share with you about my mom, because she wanted to have to donate her body to science. And she thought of this way before she had Alzheimer's. And I didn't know about it, though, until maybe 6 years before she died. And I have to admit, there was an ick factor there with me initially. And, but that's what she wanted. And so I got over it. And it was handled in such a lovely way, and her body was donated to a university in Florida. The funeral home came and picked up the body and transported the body to the airport. And maybe a month or two, she died in May. So a month or two, we got the ashes back. And again, it was handled very respectfully with so much dignity and did not cost us anything. Now, she might have paid a small amount at the initial agreement, but I don't think she did. Anyway, Mother wanted to, she always wanted to go to Mount Shasta in Northern California, but never got there. So my sister and I, with some close family members, we had a lovely memorable memorial service at her home in California. And after that, we got on a plane with Mother's ashes, and we flew to San Francisco. We rented a car, and we drove to Mount Shasta. And so we took her ashes there, and we hiked up to a beautiful, beautiful mountain meadow and held our own little ceremony, which was really meaningful. And I think it would have been I know my mother loved it because she was there with us. And it was the 4th of July. And so we scattered her ashes and really felt the freedom of her spirit moving on. So, yeah, cremation, just remember that, national park, you're not supposed to do your ashes there. So you didn't hear that from me, but just be aware where you're taking the ashes and what the rules and regulations are about that. So let me just explain green burials if you don't know what that is. Green or natural burials avoid embalming, and it avoids metal caskets and hardware. It has no concrete vaults, which are only there for perpetual care cemeteries, so the land does not sink. And next to oil and gas, I think concrete is the 3rd largest CO2 emissions emitter. So having a concrete vault just to have a pretty lawn mowing is something you pay extra for. So in a natural burial, there are no concrete vaults, and the body is placed in a biodegradable shroud or container, and it's buried at a depth that promotes natural decomposition. They're environmentally friendly. They're often less expensive and deeply hands-on for families and people that wish to be more involved. And the graves are marked with natural stones or plants, or sometimes with GPS coordinates. And if you get a chance, just go Google green burial sites near me and just take a day trip and go look at some of these places. I mean, they are beautiful. And many cemeteries now will have a portion of the cemetery that is specifically for green burial sites. And it has native plants, and, it doesn't have the large headstones, so it's, you're with your loved one in nature. And I quite like it. You can also combine your ashes from a cremation with soil to plant a tree. Or there are people that create eternal reefs where they create new marine habitats in the ocean. So there are a lot of different ways to deal with the cremated remains and to actually deal with the body. If I do the green burial, I'll try to include home funerals on that as well, because that can be a lovely way to get the family involved and the community involved in saying goodbye to a loved one. Okay. So again, the whole body donation, the option's often free, not always. Sometimes you're paying for transportation, and it supports medical education and research. And medical schools, if that's where it's going, they could take a year or more to return the ashes. Private companies often do it within weeks. And so always check the ethics and the transparency of the organization and make sure that your family knows your wishes. My mother had it all laid out. This is the contractual agreement. This is who you call. And my funeral director, just dealt with all of it. So again, think of using a hybrid of a funeral director, or, all the different ways that you used to think of a funeral. Think of it more now as a hybrid, to really do it a la carte, the way you want it to be, the way your loved one would want it to be. Now, if there are no plans, I'm sorry. That's families can feel lost and overwhelmed. And sometimes they'll just skip the service altogether, thinking, well, he didn't want anything. She didn't want anything. But you're really robbing everyone else of a chance for closure. Even a small gathering can help loved ones process their grief. So we all deserve a curtain call. And your life has touched people in ways that you may never know. And a funeral or memorial is both your final gift to them, and it's their gift back to you. If it can be one of these rare moments in life where we experience what's often called the peace that passes all understanding, I think it's worth it to do it, to have that moment for yourself and collectively as a community. So let's just go over some benefits of memorial gatherings. It reinforces the reality of the loss, and it allows loved ones to recognize their grief. I think this is really important. It helps people step into their new role into society. I was once a wife, and now I am a widow. I was once a child of a parent, and now I am an orphan. We have different changing roles after the death of a loved one. And it is important to be introduced to society with that in mind. A pre-planned funeral helps us to reflect on our own lives. And in the Leaving Your Legacy video that I did, I talked about the writing the 2-page narrative that can be used as your obituary, but also could be read by someone at the funeral. So I'm just going to say it offers group support and shared connection, and it creates community in a time where we need community so badly. And a funeral, a memorial service is a way to create that, and it can be one of your parting gifts to your loved ones and to your friends, to your family, to your community. So please consider doing something as small or inexpensive as possible so there's closure. And there are prayers said on your benefit that lift you up to a higher place. Maybe you don't believe that, but I do. And those prayers at the end of life really matter. Lift us all up. Lift us all up. So just in closing, consider your budget and your preferences. Decide how you want your body to be cared for. Communicate your wishes clearly and in writing, and share them with your family. Then you're done. You've taken care of it. So I hope that helps. So will you take the time to plan your curtain call? I hope you will. Because the way we leave this world matters, both for us and for those who love us. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone you care about. And remember, at Dying Your Way, we believe that the more that we plan and talk about death, the more fully we can live. And it just makes it easier for everyone. So until next time, I'm Claire O'Berry. Take care. Live well. And you can die well too. And we're here to support that.
Thank you for joining us on Dying Your Way. If it's inspired you, then please spread the word. Leave a rating and review so others can find out about us. To learn more, connect with us on Facebook or our website at dyingyourway.com. A special thank you for the artist Mel Dobra for letting us use her song, Smoke and Flame, as the soundtrack of our show. I invite you to return, hear each episode, and be part of the conversation on death literacy. I am Claire O'Berry, and this is Dying Your Way. Reaching